Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: Finding Strength in Solitude. In the bustling city of Seattle lived a man named Daniel. At 33, Daniel was a successful architect known for his innovative designs and attention to detail. He lived in a stylish apartment downtown and enjoyed a life filled with friends, hobbies, and adventures. Despite his fulfilling life, there was one question that seemed to follow him everywhere: why are you still single? Daniel had been in a few serious relationships over the years, but none had worked out. His friends were mostly married or in long-term relationships, and family gatherings often involved subtle, and not so subtle, comments about his single status. While these remarks stung, Daniel was determined not to let them define his happiness. One rainy afternoon, Daniel decided to take a break from his hectic schedule and visit a small, cozy café he had recently discovered. As he sipped his coffee and watched the raindrops race down the window, he reflected on his life. He realized that he had always been someone who found joy in solitude and personal growth. He decided to embrace his single life and focus on the things that made him happy. Daniel started by making a list of personal goals and adventures he wanted to embark on. At the top of his list was a solo trip to Iceland, a place he had always dreamed of visiting. A month later, Daniel found himself standing on the black sand beaches of Vik, feeling the cool Atlantic breeze against his face. The breathtaking landscapes, with their glaciers, waterfalls, and volcanic formations, filled him with a sense of awe and wonder. During his travels, Daniel met other solo adventurers from around the world. He bonded with a fellow traveler named Sophie, who was also exploring Iceland on her own. They shared stories of their journeys and dreams, forming a friendship that enriched their experiences. Sophie admired Daniel's courage to travel alone and pursue his passions, and their conversations helped Daniel see the beauty in his solitary path. Back in Seattle, Daniel returned to his routine with a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into his work, taking on challenging projects that pushed the boundaries of his creativity. He also took up photography, capturing the city's architectural marvels and natural beauty through his lens. His photos garnered attention, and he was invited to exhibit his work at a local gallery. One evening, while attending the opening of his photo exhibition, Daniel ran into an old college friend, Kevin. They hadn't seen each other in years and quickly fell into an easy conversation. Kevin was intrigued by Daniel's stories of solo travel and personal growth. They exchanged numbers and began meeting up for coffee and hikes, enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations. As months passed, Daniel's life continued to flourish. He found joy in his solitude and fulfillment in his pursuits. He and Kevin grew closer, and their friendship deepened into something more. Daniel appreciated that their relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, allowing both of them to maintain their independence while sharing their lives. One day, as they stood on a hilltop overlooking the city, Kevin turned to Daniel and said, "Daniel, being with you feels like an adventure. I admire your strength and the way you've embraced your life. I'm glad we reconnected." Daniel smiled, feeling a sense of contentment and clarity. "Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad too. But remember, our happiness comes from within. We're choosing to share our journeys, not complete them." In the end, Daniel's story was not about finding love in the traditional sense, but about discovering and embracing himself. He had learned that being single at 30 was not a state of lack, but a canvas for creating a fulfilling and meaningful existence. His journey was a testament to the power of self-love, independence, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead when one embraces life wholeheartedly. Story: Creating Happiness on Her Own Terms. Mia's inspiring life. In the bustling city of New York, lived a woman named Mia. At 32, Mia was a successful marketing executive, known for her creativity and determination. She had a close group of friends, a loving family, and a fulfilling career. Yet, there was one aspect of her life that often drew unsolicited attention: her single status. Mia had been in and out of relationships over the years, but none had lasted. She often found herself at social gatherings, where well-meaning friends and family members would ask, "So, are you seeing anyone?" Mia would smile and politely answer, but deep down, she sometimes felt the societal pressure to be in a relationship. One sunny Saturday morning, Mia decided to take a break from her hectic life and spend the day exploring the city she loved. She visited a quaint coffee shop in Greenwich Village, where she sat by the window, savoring her latte and watching people go by. She found solace in these quiet moments, where she could reflect on her journey and appreciate her independence. As Mia sipped her coffee, she overheard a conversation at the next table. Two women were discussing their relationships, and one of them said, "I just feel like I'm not complete without him." Mia felt a pang of empathy, but also a sense of determination. She didn't want to feel incomplete because she was single; she wanted to embrace her life as it was. Inspired, Mia decided to embark on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth. She started by making a list of things she had always wanted to do, but had put off for various reasons. At the top of her list was traveling solo. Mia had always dreamed of visiting Italy, and now seemed like the perfect time. A month later, Mia found herself in Rome, standing in front of the Colosseum. The sense of freedom and adventure was exhilarating. She spent her days exploring ancient ruins, savoring delicious cuisine, and getting lost in the narrow streets of charming villages. Each moment was a reminder that she could create her own happiness. During her travels, Mia met people from all walks of life, each with their own unique stories. She befriended a fellow solo traveler named Sophia, who was also on a journey of self-discovery. Together, they shared their experiences and dreams, forming a bond that transcended the brief time they spent together. Returning to New York, Mia felt rejuvenated and inspired. She realized that her worth was not defined by her relationship status, but by the life she chose to live. She threw herself into her work with renewed passion, started painting again, a hobby she had neglected for years, and joined a local hiking group to explore the great outdoors. One evening, at a gallery opening where Mia was showcasing her paintings, she ran into an old friend, Mark. They hadn't seen each other in years and quickly fell into easy conversation. Mark was intrigued by Mia's stories of solo travel and personal growth. They exchanged numbers and began meeting up for coffee and hikes, enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations. As months passed, Mia's life was rich with new experiences and deepened friendships. She found joy in her solitude and fulfillment in her pursuits. She and Mark grew closer, but this time, there was a sense of mutual respect and understanding. They were both whole individuals, choosing to share their lives without losing their independence. One day, as Mia and Mark stood at the top of a mountain, looking out at the breathtaking view, Mark turned to her and said, "Mia, being with you feels like an adventure. I admire your strength and the way you've embraced your life. I'm glad we reconnected." Mia smiled, feeling a sense of contentment and clarity. "Thank you, Mark. I'm glad too. But remember, our happiness comes from within. We're choosing to share our journeys, not complete them." In the end, Mia's story was not about finding love in the traditional sense, but about discovering and embracing herself. She had learned that single life was not a state of lack, but a canvas for creating a fulfilling and meaningful existence. Her journey was a testament to the power of self-love, independence, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead when one embraces life wholeheartedly. Story: New Year's Eve ruined twice. It was New Year's Eve. I was alone and lonely. It had been 3 months since I had not talked to my boyfriend. I missed him, but I knew I was helping him to come back to his senses. You see, Jude was slowly turning into an alcoholic and had already drained his money. He owed money from most of our friends. 3 months prior, he had a temporary job that paid him well. He paid some of his department and asked me to keep his card so he doesn't feel the urge to go drink, since he was planning to use the rest of the money to build up his career and open a business. One evening, we were invited in a party that was to happen in a club. I told him we should not go because I was worried that he would be too generous and drain his account. This had happened before. He insisted on going and I let him go alone but kept his card. It didn't take long until he came back in the middle of the night, drunk as a skunk. "I need my card, but I thought you'd." "What's the name on the card, yours or mine?" "It's my card, my money, my rights. Look honey, you're not well right now. Why won't you come and rest and we can talk tomorrow?" "I'm not drunk and I'm not stupid, give me my card." He was starting to yell and I didn't want to bother my roommate, so I handed him his card but asked him not to bother calling me or come to see me again until he sobered up. The next morning, I was embarrassed to hear someone saying that at the end of the night Jude was walking on all four. I pictured that image in my head, my very tall, dark, and handsome boyfriend crawling because he couldn't stand. Alcohol had crippled him. This is not the life I wanted with him. My heart sank on that thought and I felt horrible for not being able to help him. I sent him a text giving him 2 options. Either end our relationship for good or take 6 months apart so he can think about what he wants in life, seek help, and sober up. 3 months had gone by and my heart was aching for him. Every day was a test for me. I was tempted to go see him or at least call or text, but I knew one move from my part would ruin any progress he had made, if any at all. Jude and I grew up in a small town, and most of our friends were from there. We moved to the city for studies and lived in the same neighborhood. We were those cousin-like kind of friends. We cared for each other so much that everyone in the group seemed to be worried about Jude. We would have parties in our apartments, or go out, but since Jude had been not himself, they had kind of singled us out until that New Year's Eve. "Hey, are you home?" One of our friends who was a doctor calls me. "Yeah, what's up?" "I was wondering if you can come here for a moment if you're free." Finally, an invitation for New Year's Eve. I thought, okay, I'll be there. Upon entering, instead of Dr. Chris, I find Dr. Dan, his friend, sitting alone. "Hey, how are you? Is Chris in?" I said as I pour a glass of juice. "No, he just left, he got paged at the hospital." "Oh, I will call him after then," I said, trying to leave. "No, have a sit, I need to talk to you about something." I sit down, confused, but ready to listen. Dan looked serious and restless that my thoughts jumped to Jude. Was he okay? "I owe you something and I'm not going to beat around the bush. Do you know your HIV status?" "Okay. What is this about? Is this dude serious?" A million thoughts were racing in my mind. I wanted to curse but I never do so. But seriously, does he think I can? No, that's not why he asked this question. And yeah, he did owe me, but seriously, no one asks about HIV status to a person they're not looking forward to. I'm sorry, I don't mean. No, that's not my intentions. He said as if he was reading my mind. I just want to give you clarity on something. You have to trust me on this. If you don't know your status yet, I have a testing kit with me here. Still confused, my guts tell me to let him test me. I stretch my head toward him without saying a word. My brain was too frozen to even feel the sting of the needle. But for some reason, I just left before the results. I went for a walk to clear my head, but instead the further I walked the heavier my head felt. I could hear my phone ringing, but I knew it was Dan and I couldn't pick it up. Somehow my walk ended up in Chris's home. Dan was still there and Chris was back. They looked happy and when they saw me, they asked to be happy and celebrate because my HIV status came out negative. Now, I'd never been confused. Why? These people knew me from my childhood and they thought I had HIV? I felt pissed, but before I could leave, they sat me down and explained. We have known for a long time, but we couldn't tell you. Jude's status are positive, and he told me that you don't know. I disclosed this to Dan because Jude had put me in a very difficult position and I have not been sleeping. I couldn't process any of that, I was shaking and sweating, but I was also afraid to leave. Dan excused himself and left. Dan was trying to help me understand, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I told him that I was afraid to sleep on my own, and he said I could stay there for the night. He took the couch and I took the bedroom. I didn't sleep, I wanted to call Jude but I couldn't, and still now I wish I did. You see, in the morning, someone was knocking on the door and for a moment I thought I was dreaming hearing Jude's voice. I woke up and went in the living room to confirm. It was not a dream. Is it okay if I wait for her here? He was asking Chris as I entered the living room. Story: I'm in love with my best friend and I don't know if she likes me back. I'm currently a 21-year-old female in college, and I met this girl who recently became my best friend. We started hanging out more during the spring semester and we just instantly clicked, hanging out in the same friend group. Within this group, we started flirting in front of our other friends as a joke, and this continued for a while. I have always identified as straight and have only thought about dating guys my whole life. However, since I've become friends with her, I've been questioning myself if I like her in a different way. She's very touchy-feely with me. We're always hugging or on top of each other, taking naps together at school, etc. This is when I started liking the affection from her and constantly craving it. During this whole time, I had no idea if she even liked girls or not. Then, on the last day of school, she told me she's bi and that she might like girls. When she told me this, my heart raced with excitement. First, because she was comfortable enough to tell me, and second, because I might not be crazy and she actually could be interested in me. I've always gotten vibes from her that she might be interested, but I think she believes I'm 100% straight, so I don't know if that affected our relationship. It was really new for me to have these feelings of attraction for a girl, so I didn't really want to say anything about my sexuality because I literally have no idea. I don't like other girls, I just like her. We then basically started hanging out the whole summer, meeting whenever we could in our busy schedules, which was at least once a week. One day, while hanging out, I told her how I kissed one of my girlfriends on a drunken night out as a joke, just to see how she would react. This is when it clicked for her that I might not be completely straight, as I could see the shock on her face. We continued hanging out the whole summer, cuddling in bed, calling each other baby, and she would say I'm her girlfriend. I've never outright discussed my sexuality with her as both our families are very religious, and it's not something we could make public. So, we're basically stuck in the closet. We say we're dating as a joke all the time and play along with it to our friends, but I ended up catching real feelings. Fast forward, it's now the fall semester, and she's gotten very social and friendly with other people. I tend to get jealous sometimes when I see her with other people, even though she's literally with me 24/7 every second of the day. She recently told me how she finds one of the guys in our class cute, and that really bothered me. I would tell her, "Wow, so you're cheating on me now," and she would laugh it off and think it's a joke. I get so frustrated that she's interested in these other guys and acts like she's obsessed with them. She's so affectionate with me, and we're always touching, holding hands. I'll be holding her waist when we're waiting in line, holding her face, caressing her hands, etc. I get confused because I don't know if this is how best friends should act. I really don't think so. Moving on, we went to a party one night at the beginning of the fall semester and got pretty drunk. There were some pretty close calls in the summer where I thought we were going to kiss, so I made it my mission that night that I was finally going to do it. My whole plan went perfectly, and I finally got her alone. I'm pretty sure she's the one who initiated the kiss. I was planning on kissing her at that exact moment, but she went for the kiss first. I kissed her back, and we broke it off as some other people walked in to check on us literally 2 seconds after we broke it off. We spent the whole night giggling and being physically affectionate. When it was time to go home and I was waiting for my Uber, she was kissing my face with little pecks, kissing my neck, and even bit my neck. It was really difficult for her to leave me that night as she was going home with another one of our friends accompanying her. She asked me why I wasn't kissing her back while still clearly drunk, but it was in front of a lot of other people, and I'm not ready for anyone to see me kissing a girl. That same night, when she got home, I texted her about how she was a good kisser. That's the only time we acknowledged the kiss. Story: how can someone date a person who everyone else hates? In this scenario, a girl I know is dating a dude I used to be friends with. The girl is normal and the guy is the asshole/one everyone hates. First of all, I just want to explain my experience with him as a friend. We met at work. He was 23 and I was 21. When we first met, he didn't have many other friends at work or outside of it. But he seemed cool enough, so I started hanging out with him. We were friends for 2 years and he told me on multiple occasions that I was his best friend, and he was one of my best friends as well. We had a pretty normal friendship. Only thing I noticed was sometimes he would be pretty undermining. I would show him a band or show I liked, and if he didn't like it he would really roast me. I figured it's okay, he's still stuck in that high school mindset of friendship where all you do is roast each other, since he hasn't had much experience with friendship as an adult. It never bothered me too much. One thing also happened that at the time I dismissed as maybe he was having a bad day, but now made me realize it was more than that. He asked me for help with something at work, and normally I would always help him. This time I was too busy with my own work, so I told him I couldn't. He basically ignored me for the next couple of days after that, before eventually coming up to me like nothing had happened. Anyways, fast forward 6 months ago, and all of a sudden out the blue he completely stopped talking to me. I asked him in person, by text, what was wrong, and he just ignored me. To this day, I and everyone else at work still don't know what caused this. I figured to myself, I guess it had to be something I did. No one would end a friendship over nothing, especially without telling the other person why. But over the course of the next few weeks, I started finding out things about him through other people that I always heard of but dismissed because he was my friend. I heard that I'm not the only person who was his friend that he would end up cutting out of his life for no reason. One dude he was friends with apparently couldn't give him a lift home, so after that day he never talked to him again. He used to play online games with a couple of people, but when they wouldn't let him play as a certain character that one day, he cut them off and never played or talked with them again. I heard stories of him talking shit behind others people's back. All these things and people coming together made me realize how crappy of a person he is, and it was a good thing that we aren't friends anymore. I was ready to just put this guy behind me and move on, but now he started dating one of my other friends. She's a newer girl at work. She is 21. I started talking to her and she was really sweet and hardworking. I don't have any romantic feeling towards her, I just see her as a friend. I actually tried setting up her and my other friend up because he said he was interested. She wasn't exactly open to it, so I dropped it. After finding out that she wasn't interested, he went back on what he said before saying stuff like, I was never actually interested her, I was just joking, she's actually pretty ugly. He said more mean stuff and I told him that he was being an asshole, but because he was my friend I let it go and never told her. I regret that. I should have told her. I should have ended the friendship right there, but I often get blinded by friendship and let them say and do bad things. Basically simultaneously at the same time that he stopped talking to me, they started dating. She also stopped talking to me, probably because he made me look bad to her. And I just don't get what she sees in him. Myself and everyone see a big baby who only cares about himself and cuts people out of his life when he doesn't get what he wants. And what sucks the most is she is turning into him now. She is no longer sweet and caring to anyone. She has become a lazy, selfish worker just like he is. I know that she is a good person, because I knew how she was before she started dating him, and I know it's not just a random shift in personality. I know it has to do with him. And I just don't get why become a person who is not nearly as liked as they used to be, for some dude who sucks. How can she not see what literally everyone else sees? They have been dating for 6 months now, and it honestly makes me a little sick. I feel bad for her, because I just know that, eventually, made not for a while, but eventually she will go through the same thing with him that I and many others have. Story: My little love story while in Europe. Hey everyone, hope everyone's a good day today. I just wanted to share my little love story that happened on my recent holiday trip. So I booked a 16-day trip in Europe across 9 countries in early December through Contiki. I went into the trip hoping to meet a lot of new people and see/experience a lot of things in Europe, and sure enough, I experienced and met a lot of interesting and friendly people that I spent 16 days traveling with. I met this wonderful girl, let's call her Grace, on the first day of the trip, and we sat next to each other on the bus. As we talked and talked throughout the bus trip, I became very fond of her and would spend the next few days of the trip with her, not exclusively but part of a small group. Days went by and I had started to develop feelings for her. Now I've never been in a relationship before, and I'd say I'm quite inexperienced with the whole flirting game, because my way of dealing with these kind of feelings is to just sit on them or just flat out ignore them. However, I've been on a bit of a spiritual journey this year with regards to self-love and self-discovery, so I thought, what the hell, I'll shoot my shot, as I probably have a very low chance of seeing her again after the trip finishes, as we all go our separate ways. So if it happens, it happens. Grace had her birthday coming up soon and we be in Rome together to celebrate it, so I decided I'll buy her a thoughtful gift and tell her about my feelings for her, but at this point I didn't know what to get her. About 4 days before we got to Rome, we were in Prague and I was visiting/seeing the infamous Charles Bridge with Grace and a bunch of other people. While we were there, Grace kept going on about how the Spider-Man Far From Home had a scene on this bridge featuring Tom Holland and Zendaya. I'm a vivid Spider-Man fan, so I knew instantly what scene she was talking about. It was the scene where Tom takes Zendaya out for a walk on the bridge and then tries to give her a gift and confess his feelings for her. This was my lightbulb moment. I knew what I wanted to do now. We were going to be in Venice in a couple days, and I know in the movie Tom Holland buys a black dahlia flower necklace for Zendaya. So I thought I'd try to kinda replicate that and try to buy the same necklace for Grace. So a couple days go by and we end up in Venice. At this point I'm so excited because I've never done something like this for anyone before, and for once in my life I'm actually trying to do something about my feelings for someone. Anyways, straight after the tour of Venice in gondolas, I head out on my search for the necklace on my own. I went into every glass shop I could find as I was walking around the streets of Venice, but I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. Hours go by, and it was soon time to leave the city of Venice, yet I couldn't find anything that I was looking for, but thankfully half an hour before we were due to get in the ferry and leave Venice, I found a shop that had a beautiful necklace that had a black flower as the central piece, and I knew as soon as I saw it that it was the one. It wasn't exactly like the one in the movie, but it looked similar enough so that she'd know where it was from and the meaning behind it. So I left Venice feeling accomplished. A day later we're in Rome. Finally the day had come. I was very excited, but also quite nervous, as this was in the realm of the unknown for me. I mustered up the courage to ask her to see her alone. We met in the lobby and I suggested that we go for a walk outside. So we went on a walk. I asked how her day was going and what she got up to today, as we had a free day in Rome. Soon after that conversation I told her that I got her a birthday gift and promptly handed her the wrapped box with the necklace. As she opened it, she realized what the necklace was and where it was from almost immediately. She stopped walking and asked, "Is this a black dahlia necklace?" And I replied yes. She opened up her arms and asked me for a big hug. It was one of the best hugs I've ever received, and then I told her about my feelings for her. She told me she kinda knew already from other people. I told a few other people on the trip, but she wasn't really looking for anyone at this point as she had a really bad break-up earlier in the year. She had also started to distance herself from me prior to this day, but I didn't really try to think of it much. Anyways, I understood her perspective on the matter and thanked her for her honesty. On the way back to the hotel, she told me she felt bad for saying no, and I told her that she shouldn't feel bad about being completely honest with me. It's for the betterment of both of us. We then proceeded to distance ourselves a bit from each other for the rest of the trip to give each other a bit of space. I didn't let this rejection ruin the rest of the trip. In my mind, I wore it like a badge of honor. I'm so proud of myself that I did something like this for someone special even though it didn't work out in the end. Now I feel like telling every one of my friends and the whole world about this, so here I am. Everyone now and then I'd watch the Venice and Prague scene from the movie to feel the butterflies again because I went out and did something very similar to the movie. Thanks for reading all this if you got to the end. I appreciate you. Story: My wife said she loves me and her ex-boyfriend. To give context, I am 30 years old and have been married for 2 years to my wife Jane, the love of my life. I am a pediatrician and earn a good salary, so my wife doesn't have to work. She and I have always been very close. We met through a mutual friend. It was quick, but even so, there was a very strong connection. I have always been somewhat shy and reserved, while she, on the other hand, is very sociable and likes to party. I have never had a problem with this since we have always had a very good relationship based on trust. A couple of months ago, I came home late at night after a long day at work. I was heading towards the bedroom when I saw Jane sitting on the bed, looking at her cell phone and laughing. I approached her, and she quickly turned off her phone, using the excuse that she was just talking to her sister. I believed her since I had a lot of trust in her. While we continued our conversation, she brought up the topic of Scott, her ex-boyfriend. I didn't have a problem with him since they had remained friends, and I liked him. She told me he was in town and that they were going to meet up the next day. I trusted her and didn't see it as something bad, so we left it at that. The next day, when I came back from work, also late, I entered my house and saw them sitting on the couch, chatting cheerfully. I couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed, but I tried to ignore it. I approached them and noticed how Scott got a bit nervous, and my wife reassured him. She told me she had invited him over to show him the house, and I didn't think much of it. We chatted, the three of us, and everything seemed normal, or so I thought. Things changed a week later. My wife told me that Scott would be staying for an entire month for work since he lived about 3 hours away from our city. While I was at my office, I received several messages from my younger sister, who is a 21-year-old girl close to my wife. She told me she had seen Jane and Scott at some kind of party together, kissing. She then sent me a photo taken from a distance where you could indeed see them kissing. I couldn't believe it. I was at work and wanted to die. I never would have imagined that my wife, whom I love so much, was with that man. I felt devastated. After finishing my workday, I returned home as usual, feeling sad. I entered and saw my wife. She greeted me with a smile as she usually did. I sat down next to her and told her what I had found out. At first, she denied it, but then with a sad look, she admitted it. She confessed that she still had feelings for her ex-partner, but that she also loved me very much. She said her heart was torn between Scott and me. She didn't want to leave the life we had built, but at the same time wanted to be with Scott. I felt terribly bad. I don't have the words to describe how I felt when she told me that. The woman I thought I would grow old with and loved me as much as I loved her was also in love with her ex. After that, without any shame, she suggested opening our marriage. I love her with all my soul, and it hurt me a lot that she said that. After arguing for a few minutes, I told her I needed time to clear my thoughts. She, with a sad look, told me to take all the time I needed but that she would wait for me. She then took her things and left. I cried for several hours. I had never felt so sad in my life. Jane, the woman of my life, loved another man. A month has passed since she left. I am not good at expressing myself with people and find it easier to write what I feel. I thought about posting my feelings here on Reddit to get various opinions since I still love Jane and what I want most is to have her back. But it still hurts me a lot that she wants to open a relationship. I don't know what to do or who to turn to. I went to therapy, but I can't find any comfort or solution. Please tell me what to do. I don't know if I was expressive enough in this text, but I still want some advice from any of you. I will give updates. Story, First Love Theory. I'm 19 years old, and I'm still in love with a guy I barely talked to in the summer of 10th grade. For starters, I'm just coming on this to get it out of my system. For some background information, I met this guy who was in one of my classes right before summer started. Prior to this, I had never been in a real relationship, mostly because I think high school relationships are a waste of time and a way to break your perception of love. I had always been asked out by guys, which I thought was weird because I didn't see myself as this amazingly beautiful person. I thought I was in the middle and stuck with it because, generally, I don't care. But often, people would ask me out, and I would say no every single time. In June, towards the end of school, I started talking to this guy, which was surprising for me because I don't do talking stages, but he wanted to get to know me, so I actually said yes. We started talking, and I wasn't really sure if I even liked him, but many were surprised that we were talking because he was really well known or popular among specific people at school, and I kind of kept to myself. Our convos in text would be pretty unresponsive because I avoided talking to him, and the few times I did talk to him in person, I said all the wrong things. For example, once I said it's good that we have one class together, he said no, we have two, and I argued, but he was right, so basically, I didn't know much about the guy. But he was kind, understanding, and really liked me. As I talked to him more, I realized he was quite different from most of his awful friends. Flash forward to summer starting. He always wanted to see me, but I always made excuses because, for starters, I have avoidant attachment issues, and second, I was afraid. But he was quite understanding. Sooner or later, things got pretty dry, and we stopped talking. The last time we talked, I intended to make plans, but that was a lie because I was actually in the hospital for reasons he would not understand. Part of the reason why I stopped talking to him was because his life was perfect. He had a loving family and people who surrounded him with unconditional love and support, and I had the complete opposite. Although we were similar as people, we were that much different in our own lives, so I left. After a week, I thought I'd be okay, but I wasn't. I felt aching heart pain. I did not know what it was. I kept thinking that I've been through so much awful shit in my life, so why does this even matter? I found myself missing everything about him, so I texted him in August, but there was no response. So then I decided to remove him from my social media. I felt like an idiot because I would not feel this way if I hadn't talked to him and played it smart like I always do. Going forward, I went back to school and found out he was in a relationship. I hated seeing him every day. It hurt me so bad knowing he'd never like me the way I liked him. What's funny is that he wanted me first. My mind was always on him. I'd talk to my friends and pretend I was talking to him. When it got to the point where I would just try to avoid him, I still saw him. I went to the fair. I saw him there. I went to the movies. I saw him there. It was just not fair. It felt like I was being punished. He was always there with his girlfriend. Although I never felt insecure, I just kept thinking about how good things could have been if I didn't sabotage my own happiness. It got to a point where everything in my life was so messed up, and every time I was hurt, I'd think about him to feel better. I just kept reminding myself how I've been through worse than most people I know, so I thought I would get over this, but I never did. I felt like Kevin when he wasn't around. Through this whole thing of a war within myself, I never let him know because, even though it was hard, I wanted to preserve respect for myself. If I told him all this, it would be a whole different story, but he'll never know. Although that hurts, I think I'm content with it. To this day, I think about him and hurt. Sometimes, when things go wrong in my life, all I think about is him and the comfort he gave me. I've always been the girl to be there for my friends and pick them up and give them motivation by telling them all the hardships in my life that also help them keep going, but I'd never had someone to make me feel like that until I met him. It's been so long, and I don't think my love ever died down or changed. Story: my ex-best friend went insane. Me, 20-year-old, met Emily, 19-year-old, when we were 2 and had been friends on and off until we became best friends freshman year. She was always a bit different and really weird, but in a cool way, and she was never made fun of for it. We just made sense as friends, and everyone knew us as Emily and Claire, the best friends. When epidemic hit sophomore year, we were inseparable. We spent every second together. My mom never liked her, but I could never see why, and most people looked at her as controlling due to my not hanging out with any of my other friends, but I never saw it like that because I had the best time with her and honestly would choose her every time. I had a boyfriend at the time who she hated very much and didn't like me hanging out with him, but he lived far enough away that I didn't see him too often anyway. Emily started being a bit more interested in boys and was dating around a bit before meeting Brayden, whom she dated for around 5 months. We both got broken up with at the same time. I think this is where things started to go downhill. Emily handled her breakup rough. She started doing crazy things that I would just go along with, like driving the 40 minutes to his house and sitting outside waiting for him or taking pictures of his house and sending them to him. She constantly stalked him, called him, and left voicemails, but Emily and I were so close that anything she did was an exception, even if I thought it was crazy. I would even go along with it. After this, Emily really started sleeping around and meeting with lots of different guys to hook up. I was totally for it and even encouraged her to have her hot girl summer since Brayden was her first for everything and she handled it so rough. I can't remember why, but she ended up losing her car for a bit, probably got grounded, and she had come up with a plan to meet up with this boy an hour away, and of course I went along with it. Since she didn't have a car at the time, her plan was I would drive her the hour away, and then when we were 2 minutes from the guy's house, I would pull over and get in the trunk, and she would drive the rest of the way to hook up with him, and then we would drive home. We make it there, and within 1 minute after the switch, she crashes my car with me in the trunk. We were okay other than a little bruising, and my car was totaled. We ended up lying to the police and saying I crashed my car because her 6 months weren't up yet and I didn't want her to get in trouble. We slowed down after this and stopped acting so crazy. I got a boyfriend, Tyson, 17-year-old, but Emily again hated him and would limit our time together. While I was with Tyson, I liked him so much, but the second I'd be around Emily, I would question our relationship because Emily would just say bad things about him. I actually ended up breaking up with him at one point. Tyson hated Emily but never said anything because he knew we were best friends and he just got over it. My mom was constantly trying to get me to stop being her friend because I was really innocent and never got into any trouble before her. She also told me Emily was being very manipulative, but I never saw that because, in the end, I thought Emma was a great best friend, and I made those decisions too. Tyson and I got closer, and I started spending a bit less time with Emily. She met Landon, 17-year-old, whom she went on a date with, and instantly fell in love, that's how she put it. I was friends with him at one point, and he came from an incredible family. He was just a great guy, so I thought this was good. They ended up hooking up, and Emily came to me to tell me all the details and how amazing the sex was. A couple days later, he broke it off due to him not thinking his family would approve, and the day after, she says she's pregnant. She wouldn't show me the test, but why would anyone lie about that? Of course, I believed her. Landon knew he would get kicked out due to getting a girl pregnant, but he also knew he wouldn't abandon his baby, and he'd have to tell his parents, so he took all his savings and went out to buy his own car so he would have somewhere to sleep. Landon's friends knocked some sense into him and demanded to see a test that Emily would not provide. Thinking about it now, she could not have been pregnant 3 days after hooking up, and that would not show on the test. When Emily refused to take the test, I got so upset with her, and this is when I decided to back away from her a bit. Emily also accused Landon's friends of kidnapping her that night after I left, but I was not there, so I don't know what actually happened. Emily's mom found out about all of this because Emily ended up accusing Landon of raping her that night, so the police got involved. Emily was no longer allowed to hang out with me because I was a bad influence on her. A week after all of this, Emily said she fell down the stairs and had a miscarriage. I completely stopped being friends with her after all of this because I was hurt, she didn't stand up for me, and I stopped believing her lies. Tyson and I stayed dating, and when we finally went back to school in junior year for hybrid, there were lots of rumors about how Emily had another faked pregnancy. She was a huge topic around the school, and everyone knew about what had happened. Emily and I ended up reconnecting over the summer, going into senior year, but I ended the friendship again because I found out she was tracking my location without my knowledge. She reached back out again towards the end of senior graduation with a huge apology, and she told me she was seeing a therapist and had been dating a really good guy. I was a lot more careful, but over time we grew closer, and she had no mess-ups. Tyson was not supportive of us being friends, and he was so worried for me that I assured him that she had changed. She had switched her career choice 3 times, and I was living at the fire station as a sleeper and going to school to be an EMT until I had a horrible call that made me realize I couldn't do it anymore, and I went full-time to being a barista and babysitter on the side while she was in online school trying to figure out what she wanted to do and also babysitting quite a bit on the side. After months of us rekindling our whole relationship, Emily presented this whole idea to me about starting a daycare business together and gave all the details and how this would work, and I loved the idea. I put in my 2 weeks and took all my tips I had saved for a deposit, and somehow we got approved for a cute little apartment while we started getting certified. We got donated books and toys and got a bunch of things from Goodwill, but it came together really fast, and I was so excited because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I loved kids, and this sounded like a perfect career for me. We were barely going to make it by, but I had enough money saved to be there a couple months with no income until we started getting kids. I also want to add that the first day we moved in, I ended up winning the bigger bedroom 3 times, and she threw a big fit and said she would just live at home, so I gave it up to her. She also decided she wanted a puppy after we decided that wasn't going to happen, so that caused a huge fight. She was nasty to live with, and I don't even want to go into details about the gross things she would do. After a month of living there, I went to stay with Tyson for the night, and I got 3 missed calls from an unknown number. They left a voicemail, and it was the police. There had been a break-in at the apartment. I was freaking out, and so was she, and she told me that I had to stay at the apartment more often and not with Tyson because she was so scared. She also told me she was going to add a sliding lock on the door, and I have to be home by 11 o'clock every night or I wouldn't be able to get in even with a key. I fought this and said that was not okay and that I should have access to my apartment at any time, but in the end, she said she was going to do it anyway. She then tells me she's going to back out of the business, and it's all mine, but she's going to continue to live there and pay rent. I was so stressed during all this because I didn't know what I had just gotten myself into. She got the puppy she wanted so badly and never cleaned up after it. I started resenting her to the point where I could barely even talk to her, and our living together was very toxic. I also forgot to mention we got a Ring camera and extra protection around all the doors and windows after the break-ins. She was also cheating on her boyfriend, whom I believe she's still with due to him not knowing. Anyway, 2 months had passed since I lived there, and I went to stay at Tyson's, and there was another break-in. I had been kicked out of the ring, and she had said it had stopped working. I did not believe anything she said at that point. I talked to the cops and told them everything I knew and what I had thought, and they straight up told me they knew about her fake pregnancy and how her story didn't add up at all, and they think she's lying, and I agreed. She calls me the next day, saying she wants to save our friendship, and we clearly can't live together, so either I need to move out or she does, and I have to make the decision. At this point, I knew I couldn't afford it alone, but I had hope I could get more kids. She told me I'd have to get a roommate because I couldn't do it alone and that I should just move out and her boyfriend can move in, but I didn't want to throw everything I just started away, so she moved out and never spoke to me again and also refused to get the lease. We have not talked to this day, but whenever I tell this story, people are blown away by how insane she was. I do not know why I stayed with her friend for so long. I guess I only see the good in people and have way too much trust. I was clearly very manipulated by this whole friendship. The second she left, my business blossomed, and all my spots filled. I lived by myself with no roommate for the rest of the lease and made really good money. The lease just ended 2 months ago, and Tyson and I signed a new lease on a brand new house for my daycare. I am absolutely in love with my job, and I couldn't ask for a better life with Tyson. I'm so happy I got rid of that crazy toxic friend, but I guess I wouldn't be where I am today, at age 20, without all of that happening. Story: my girlfriend took a break from me and spent the summer with another guy, so she could be sure I was the one. My Sam 23-year-old girlfriend, Zoe 23-year-old, left me to be with another guy 2 years ago. She did this because she needed to be sure I was the one. I was absolutely devastated. This was a premeditated decision. In the spring of that year, we were both in college and had been together 6 years at that point. I was unaware, but she had been conversing with a guy in class. Feelings grew. She swore she never cheated or did anything physical or even met him outside of class, but they did have a lot of text conversations for the months leading up to her revelation. Just as the semester ended, she sat me down and told me she was going to go stay with him for the summer. He had just finished school and was moving to a new city and had an apartment lined up. She was going to stay with him for June and July, then return for our senior year. She offered me her phone and said I could read everything that was there. She wanted me to know she had not cheated. I was a mess. I love her immensely and did then as well. I was begging her to not do this. She tried to be as comforting and consoling as possible, but at the same time was steadfast she was going to do this. Her main reasoning being we had only ever been with each other, and she needed to know she wasn't missing out. I couldn't even begin to guess how many times she said she loved me still saw a potential future, and this was just to be sure. She even encouraged me to date. She left 5 days after this conversation. I tried so hard to get her to stay, but she went. I worked and did nothing else those entire 2 months. I didn't socialize, I barely ate, I barely slept. I went from 185 pounds to 165 pounds. She asked me to not contact her. I respected that. I was living in her apartment, everything was a reminder, a trigger. It was the worst, most painful time of my life. I knew she would return, even if not for me. We still had a year to go in college. And she did return. 1 week sooner than expected. It was a Sunday and she just showed up at the apartment. She broke down in tears upon seeing me. I was so much thinner, eyes sunken, mildly unkempt. The apartment wasn't disgusting, but it wasn't nice either. She told me she knew just from looking at me that she had destroyed me. We both cried for a long time. She was so apologetic. She said she knows now, she wants me and only me. I was more than willing to take her back. We had a tense honeymoon phase upon her return, where we were both tiptoeing around each other, spending lots of time together, but also having this elephant in the room. That lasted a month or so when I started having the anxiety attacks. This is when we finally started to address some of the issues, which we had largely avoided. It couldn't have been timed worse as we started back to classes about this time as well. Over the next 9 months or so I became more and more depressed. I was verbally abusive at times. Zoe took it, everything I said. She always tried to reassure me, always took responsibility. I asked all the time what I had lacked. What could I do better? Why wasn't I good enough? What more did she need? She always said I was great the way I was. That she made the choice she did, not because any fault of my own, but out of her own immaturity. We discussed what her life those 7 weeks was like. Obviously, it was a full sexual relationship. They went on dates, they slept in the same bed, showered together, that was our thing, at least to me it was, talked about where this was going. I didn't think the wondering, the mind movies, would be easier to deal with than the truth, but I have a lot of days where I wish it was still just my imagination. The hardest part to cope with is she told me she returned early for me, but at the same time, after his initial 6 weeks he was offered the same position at another branch. That branch was about 5 hours away. Initially he was only about 40 minutes away from our campus. They talked and decided that while this had been fun, he wasn't sure it was worth continuing long distance. She told me she had mixed feelings, which was to her an indicator to return to me and try and redeem herself. I on the other hand now endlessly wonder if she would have come back at all if not for him moving. That brings us to a year ago. I was still easily triggered. I still had my moments of name-calling and verbal outbursts. She always went into support and reassurance mode. But not this time. She teared up and said, "I deserve it, but I can't keep doing this." I realized then I was going to lose her again. I don't want to lose her, it was so hard the first time. I love her so much. At that point I rug swept everything. I stopped bringing it up. I stopped talking about my feelings about this, except in the most vague ways. If she brought it up or checked in on me, I played it off, told her I was doing good and was in a different place now. We got engaged 6 months later. We just got married 2 weeks ago. Zoe has been everything a man could hope for this last year. I have regained my trust in her, and she goes out of her way to love and support me. I am a rising star at the office. I've been really pushing hard at work. I take on all the toughest jobs, and I have been hitting it out the park. I just got promoted, and with it a substantial raise. On top of that, I have made it a point to exercise regularly and eat well every day. I am in better shape than I ever thought I would be. With all that said, I make it point to spend as much time together with my now wife. Even if she just wants to chill and watch TV, I'll massage her shoulders or feet, play with her hair, soft touch her arms or back. The little things she likes. The response has been huge. She can't keep her hands off me. We are doing small trips together, and our non-physical intimacy is consistent and deep. But it's all born of insecurity. This is my problem. I am so driven at work, and the gym, and in the kitchen, and with my wife, because I am so terrified she will leave me again. I sometimes look up the guy on social media. Just to make sure my career is going better, it is, that I am in better shape, I am. I don't want her to feel bad. I still feel so guilty of how I acted that first year we were back together, but it's hard pushing like this all the time. I'm just so afraid if I slip even a little, I'll lose her. I just got to stay focused and enjoy the little moments of rest that come. If I do that, I think I can make sure no one beats me again. Zoe and I just celebrated our 1-year wedding anniversary last month. Our relationship is going very well. We bought a house. She's always asking me how she ended up with such an amazing husband. I have been busting ass extra hard lately. I hit a big bonus at work, and her job is doing well, although she has a lot more work stress now. I've been doing my best to help take the home stress off. Generally, getting up a bit early to make sure the house is back in order before we head to work each day. I don't want her spending her time thinking about that. I still remember how she said the guy was a bit of neat freak. She said that like it was a negative, but actually her quote was, "He was kinda a neat freak," which was nice, but made me feel all this pressure. Meaning she really liked that the place was always clean while she was with him, but I bet he got bent out of shape if things were left out by her. At least that's what I think she meant when she said that. That's why I get up early and take care of the place. I fix any mess she made or any dishes left overnight while she sleeps, that way she doesn't feel like it's her fault, or like I'm bothered by the small messes she makes. It's working well. We went to Hawaii for a full anniversary vacation, which was a place we've always talked about wanting to go to. We did a lot of touristy things, but mostly I was able to catch up on sleep. I normally only get 4 to 6 hours a night. So the extra helped out when I took on this really big client at work. If I do well on this one, another promotion could be in order. I rarely check on what the guy is doing now. His career hasn't grown as fast as mine, I can tell, and he has a bit more of a belly now. I know I'm beating him, he can't compete with me anymore. Zoe brought up trying for a baby soon, which is exciting. We can afford it, and it seems like the right time. However, I have been having some thoughts, maybe you can weigh in for me. She has gotten pretty close with an older coworker, Mrs. Weaver. Mrs. Weaver was telling her about some funny stories from the times she was pregnant. They had to do with her husband making silly mistakes, but she also told Zoe how he was super supportive throughout each time. Zoe said she thought this was a sweet story. I don't know exactly what she meant by sweet. It made me feel like her priorities are changing. It may not be enough to just be fitter and more successful than the others. I know there's at least one single dad at her office. To show her I can outdo him and any potential others, I started reading some books on how to best support your spouse through pregnancy, some do's and don'ts, a few other newborn books. I do this on my breaks at work, so that it doesn't interfere with the rest of my routines. Or I listen to podcasts while working out. I doubt most men are this proactive, and really doubt the guy would have been, and the coworker is a single dad, so there's got to be something wrong with him, right? I mean, that's a red flag in itself. Unlike me, I'm all green flags, all the time. Do you think I have anything to worry about? I had almost forgot about this. I got on Reddit today because it came up on a Google search. Clicked and my profile worked. I see it's been 3 years since the last time I posted. We are the proud parents of an 18-month-old, Steven. He is perfect. Now that Zoe doesn't breastfeed anymore, I'm able to get up solo and take care of Steven. I mean, I always got up when Zoe did all those times before to help out, but now Zoe is a lot fresher. She keeps telling me it's okay to sleep in, since she is a stay-at-home mom now. But I'm still using a lot of that time to clean up the house so she can stay focused on Steven during the day. I got another promotion, my salary and benefits are huge now. It does mean I have some availability to handle problems outside of hours though. We will try and start taking trips again or go for baby number 2 soon. It took a little bit of time to conceive, but I made the necessary adjustments to help it happen. We had a major setback one night. I had only slept like 14 hours in 4 days, I was exhausted and stressed. Zoe made best effort, but I just couldn't perform. The next day I made some major adjustments. I started eating Brazil nuts for the selenium, choking down spinach, added some green tea for the caffeine, balanced out my lifting with cardio. This was hard to do, because one day we marathoned the 3 Jumanji movies, and she said The Rock was hot. Which was huge wake-up call because this whole time I had been trying to have a more balanced physique, but now I know she prefers that big bulky look. So I've been trying pack on pounds of muscle, but then I needed to get my cardio up again to prevent another incident while we were trying. It's all worked out so far. With the baby now, I had to focus more. I created a schedule to make sure I was doing all the things I needed. So every day of the week has something in every category. I plan every meal for everyone each day, I've assigned a different room of the house each day, and I have 14 activities to do with my wife or my child and I pick one each day. I also program my workouts to fit around all this. I know last time I posted people kept warning me that it was impossible to keep up at the pace I was going and I'd eventually burn out. But I haven't, I'm still keeping up, even here 3 years later. And most of that time has been with either a pregnant wife or a newborn. I also haven't heard her even mention someone else since the rock incident. So I must be doing something right. I don't know anyone I'm not better than at everything. With all that said though, I need to do better at hiding my distress sometimes. That I guess is my biggest problem. Zoe has been asking a lot about why I'm endlessly driven, why I won't let her help more. Stuff like that. I'm pretty good at diverting those questions and explaining them away. However, this week she actually asked me if I wanted to talk about her leaving that summer, and that she feels I rug swept the whole thing. I think this all stems from when she heard me crying one night. I thought she was asleep, but wasn't. I managed to cover it up, so no real harm. I can't let her know why I am like this, then she will go, I still remember it, I deserve it, but I can't keep doing this. That's what she said. If I falter now, I may as well kiss my marriage goodbye. I've failed. It's all fallen apart. This last year, she has been pushing me. Ever since she became a som, she became more aware of my habits. She wants me to see a therapist. She even offers couples counseling. I don't need a therapist, that implies there's something wrong with me. How can there be something wrong? I do it all, I've done it all forever. I tell her I'm fine, I don't know why she won't accept that. She keeps saying I don't sleep enough, I have workout addiction, I seem paranoid, I have no social life. I do those things to give us the life she wants, I stay fit for her, I'm not paranoid, I am just diligent of others. She has been going on about our lives and I point out how well I've handled everything all these years. Why does she think I can't now? I can keep going, I don't need a break. And yeah, I faltered today, but they'll never have to worry about that happening again. It was her, she brought up the past more and more. She thinks it stems from when she left, and maybe it does, but I don't want to go back there. That was so long ago, and I've done so well since then. She just won't let it go. She keeps apologizing and telling me she loves me and wants the best for me. I know all that. She says I can't keep this up, says she knows how I feel, says I need help. She doesn't know. No one knows. Then this morning happened. It was just once. She went grocery shopping, I stayed with Steven. I was focused, I was playing with him. Then we started watching Spidey and Friends, and just sitting on the couch. I didn't mean to fall asleep, he was right by me. Zoe came home, found him in the kitchen, he had gotten into 2 boxes of cereal, it was everywhere. I popped up, immediately began to help, apologized. She scooped him up, told me to stop and relax. But there was this huge mess. She said I was manic, that this was what she was talking about. That I need to rest, I need to talk to a therapist. I snapped. I screamed at her. I told her to drop it, to appreciate what she has, that I was fucking fine, and wasn't some loser who needed help, I was better than that, better than everyone. She just stood there and took it. Then she looked me right in the eye and said, "Do not scream and cuss at me, I know you are struggling, it's okay, go lay down. You need to rest." Then she grabbed Steven's go bag, took him and started for the door. I asked where she was going, she said, "Just rest please, I'm going to my mother's, I'm just taking a break." A break. I just stood there, quietly, watched her walk out. She needs a break. The last time there was a break it broke me. I have done so much and it wasn't enough. I still failed to protect my son and that's it, she's not coming back. I failed as husband and a father. I texted her brother. Asked if he would come, he said he will be here in an hour. That should be it then. For those of you who followed me all these years, I guess you were right, no one's good enough, not even me. I've never posted on here before, but for those who followed my husband Sam over the years, I am Zoe. I linked his last post to this one. I'm only doing this because a lot of you showed him tremendous support, which I appreciate, and hope that anyone who finds themselves going through crisis like he was will get help. Those who followed him know that 6 months ago we had an incident where he fell asleep while watching our son Steven. I wasn't angry, and I didn't blame him. I knew he was having a hard time. I was afraid. I had been trying to get him to get help for a while at that point, and with the emotion on the moment he snapped and lashed out. He hadn't done so in many years. At that point I made a horrible mistake I regret more than all my other life regrets combined. I was frustrated, but thought a little space would help us both diffuse. I was calm. I told him I just needed a break. I meant just for a few hours, and we went to my mother's house. I never should have left him alone. About an hour and a half later I got a call from my brother. He was so distressed. He had gotten a text from Sam asking for some help in the basement and to just let himself in. That's where he found him. He had hung himself from the basement ceiling. I hate that I couldn't see it sooner. Years went by before I really started to notice. It's just so hard when you're young. I was working too. We were trying to buy a house and have kids, travel. It was a whirlwind. When Stephen came I started to stay home. That's when I finally noticed. There had been hints, I just didn't want to see it, I guess. You just don't want to admit things to yourself. You want to think he did all this just because he wants to. You think you're reciprocating it. Reading his posts, I didn't even realize how much I missed. I know he was actively hiding his stress and habits. I know he rug-swept all his emotions that could be taken negatively. But there were hints, why couldn't I see them? I'm the catalyst of his descent. I know I didn't deserve him after what I did. I've felt that shame for 8 years now. I've done everything I could think of to repent for my choices. I won't justify them, I was wrong, and I hurt someone I love beyond measure. I'm sure some of you wonder how I could do that to him. I wonder that myself often. It's easy to throw out the usual excuses, I was young, I was immature. To tell you the actual truth, it really was just FOMO. Combined with having a few friends in my ear, which I now realize they were not friends, and a schoolgirl crush on a classmate was all it took for me to traumatize the most important person in my life. It sounds so dumb written out, but it's true. The NRE lasted about a month, then it was 3 weeks of making up reasons to see it through. By time I left I knew I had made a huge mistake, and came crawling back. I still shudder thinking how much I compartmentalized. The sight of him when I showed up has always haunted me. It's guilt I deserve and will always hold on to. For all the remorse I feel over what I did when I was 21, it pales to the feelings I have not being able to help him before it was too late. I think I have read his posts almost every day in these last 6 months. I failed him so much, I'll hold on to this pain for the rest of my life. I'll have to watch our son grow up without his father. Nothing will ever fill this void. I don't know what I wanted to accomplish with this, though it's been surprisingly cathartic. Maybe this will help someone else, someone holding on to something they can't handle on their own. If that's you, seek help, it's not weakness, it's strength. No one is perfect. No one can do it all on their own. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.